Next Curve.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to neXt Curve's Rethink podcast. I'm Leonard Lee, Managing Director of neXt Curve, and today I have a very, very special guest, Mansoor Hanif, Executive Director of Emerging Technologies at Neom. Wonderful having you. And do you want to take a moment here to introduce yourself and share a bit of your illustrious background and this exciting new role that you have here at Neom?
Well, so certainly I'd be delighted. It's not so new anymore, and I wouldn't necessarily call myself illustrious, but yeah, my background is in telecoms. I've been a telecoms geek since I started my career 27 years ago. Initially in mobile networks, and then fixed networks and converged networks. Most recently, I traveled the world doing my job, which I love, and trying to build fantastic networks that change people's lives for the better. And then the last 10 years or so, I landed back in the UK, where I'm from. I'm a UK national. And I was working in EE, the biggest 4G network there. We actually launched 4G. Did a lot of integration work with the T-Mobile and Orange networks. And then we became part of BT Group in 2015, I think. And I spent some time in the research labs. I had the honor of leading a great team of research scientists on the fixed side, mobile side, some really fascinating subjects there. Then I had the opportunity to join the UK regulator, who is called Ofcom. And that was a really fascinating time of seeing the world differently from the regulator's viewpoints, which I was amazed at the amount of impact that a regulator has and the key decisions they do. So that was a fantastic experience. And to be honest, I was really enjoying my time there. I was just getting into my swing, you could say, or into my stride. And then I got a call from out of the blue about this crazy project called Neom, which, being a curious person, I thought, well, are you for real? Is this really happening? And within a month, I was on a flight down here where I am now in Neom. Met the people and decided that it was a once in a lifetime opportunity to try and do something really different. To try and use the most of whatever I have of ideas and creativity to try and build something completely original, which is what I love to do. So I really couldn't say no. And even though I'd only been just over a year in Ofcom, I decided, right, I can't say no to this because I'd always regret it. So I started in Neom back in February of 2020, so last year, just before COVID was kicking off. So last year was pretty tough. I landed here initially in Riyadh for a couple of months. Then I came up here to Neom, which is in the northwest of Saudi Arabia, in April. And then we were in the middle of the lockdowns, etc. Yeah. But we kept on working through all of that, kept on going. Luckily, I had this fantastic project to keep me busy. And so I've been here just over a year. Initially, my main focus was on the infrastructure. So the tin in the ground, you could say, getting the fiber network going, getting the 5G network going, getting some subsea cables coming in. So some pretty big projects all the same. Yeah. It was very, very intense, and I really enjoyed that. Yeah. But the team grew, and from November of last year, I was asked to concentrate on the emerging technology side of Neom, which in reality is for me the most passionate, most motivating side of it. So I was delighted to focus all my efforts there in terms of research and development, in terms of technologies on the horizon, space, robotics, sustainable technology, and a whole load of other fascinating stuff to keep us busy.
Oh, that's amazing. It certainly sounds like a dream job, if anything. So in this installment, we'll be talking about Neom, the world's first cognitive city, and the technologies that Mansoor sees are enabling this incredible reimagination and reengineering of these things that we call cities. And if you haven't looked into Neom, it is truly remarkable. In the vision that's been laid out for this project is on a scale and a level of of revolutionary thinking that I don't think that we've seen ever. It's truly bold. And in this discussion, we'll address the following items. Firstly, we'll introduce Neom and the line. And then we'll talk about how Neom is different from your typical smart city. And then we'll have Mansoor share what he sees as the key enabling technologies of the line. So specifically those technologies that he is excited about. And we will wrap up with some of Mansoor's thoughts on how the line will change the way we all think of smart cities. So with that, hey, why don't we jump into this? Because we've mentioned Neom several times already. Maybe Mansoor, you can give our audience a bit of flavor of what Neom is. You've mentioned that it's located in a northern western region of Saudi Arabia, but what is Neom?
What is Neom? Great question, and certainly you could look at it from many viewpoints and a great amount of detail. Yeah. But I think the simple answer, which is very clear to all of us who work here, is that Neom is an accelerator of human progress across all domains. And that's why it's really particularly fascinating for curious people, like myself, because you get to work with people from all over the world with really different backgrounds who've been coming from the domains of energy, from water, food, and working together very closely. You get to learn a hell of a lot. So that acceleration of progress is not just technology, it's not just urban development, it's about every single domain that we believe is fundamental to focusing on our three key pillars, which is to change the livability of urban environments and to make sure that we have a new approach to conservationism. So protecting the environment while we develop new urban environments, which is, a tricky balance, but we believe it can be done if it's done in the right way, in a coordinated way. So respect for the environment, respect for nature, embedding nature into the urban environments in a coherent way, in a sustainable way, and also using 100% renewable energy, which is one of the key elements of Neom. And we're lucky enough to have some fantastic natural resources to enable that, including, obviously a lot of sun, but also a lot of wind, and the wind, which is very complementary to the sun, being quite stable, quite strong, and in times of the day or night, in this case, which is complementary to the sun. So it's a very interesting mix that we have of energy, but then we also need to plug maybe about 20% of that from other sources of stored energy. So we can also, push the ecosystem on the storage side of renewable energy as well. So that's the other aspect. And we think that all of this, the sustainability, the livability, respect for the environment, can still be balanced with the third pillar, which is economic well-being. So we really believe there is value, economic value, in what we do. And so it's not just about the new values, I would say, of life that we've all kind of maybe tweaked a little bit in our lives since COVID hit us, and reevaluated where we think, what do we value in life? It's those, but also not losing the fact that, we do need to drive new economic models for the future generations. And all of that is doable together in one go, we believe, in a coherent way. And it's very relevant to Saudi Arabia in particular, with the 2030 vision, which is really ambitious in terms of completely changing the model of Saudi Arabia from the economic viewpoint, for example, to diversify the economy.
Right. And on that note, this is pretty much a greenfield city. You guys are starting from scratch, right? Literally with a coastline and desert. There's no legacy that you're really having to deal with at all, right? And so that enables all of this new thinking and just creativity to come and invent this new model of what we call a city, right?
Yeah, I wouldn't say there's not many green fields here. It's more kind of open spaces and there is some desert. but it's actually an amazingly diverse region. First of all, the region here in the northwest, in the region of Tabuk, it borders with Jordan to the north, and then the Red Sea and Egypt across the Red Sea to the west. And so it's a very interesting region in itself. It's a crossroads between cultures, between countries. It's always been a crossroads for pilgrims and for trade since the beginning of time. But now it's really interestingly a crossroads for a different type of trade, you could say, with the Suez Canal passing by nearby, which has been in the news because one of the big container ships just got blocked and is blocking the whole of the Suez, and that's 12% of the world's trade just goes through there. But increasingly for data traffic, as the data trends have shifted from the Atlantic, from North America to Europe, it's now more and more we see the shift between Europe and Asia, and we're smack in the middle of that crossroads. So it's a really strategic point. But it's, as I said, it's about the size of Belgium, but as part of our approach, we really want to minimize the impact of our urban development and to implement regenerative development wherever possible. So what that means is that the actual urban development footprint is very small. It's just a few percent of the total. So we're not going to be building buildings across an area the size of Belgium. We'll be conserving most of that area and building in very specific areas. So to that extent, it's very much close to, as you say, greenfield. There's very little legacy. I mean, there is some legacy. There's some legacy roads. There's some legacy telecoms towers. There's some legacy electricity towers, pylons, a few villages. But it was very much an area that was considered to be a remote region, a very beautiful region of Saudi Arabia, but a remote one. So the only legacy infrastructure there is quite sparse. And the areas that we plan to build in are actually mostly areas where there is nothing at all. So the line is mainly going to be building in areas where there's absolutely nothing. So that is pure legacy free.
Right. So speaking of the line, very, very interesting concept. Why don't you take a moment and maybe describe the line to our audience, but more importantly, probably explain why a line. What was the rationale behind that? Because I think it's just fascinating and a bit of a head scratcher when you first hear about it, right? It's just such a different and unique idea.
Absolutely, and you're right. We maybe haven't explained all the details, and there's a lot more details coming in the future because we've only just kind of showcased the high level concept of the line. When I came to visit Neom and spoke to a few people here, it was just at that time that it was just consolidating the idea of the line. And honestly, for me, that was a hammer blow to me when I saw that, and I thought, this is the concept of what we're going to be building, and it's not going to be like anywhere in the world, and it's not going to be comparable to any other so-called smart city or mega city or mega project. For that originality of thought, that for me was the number one deciding point when I said, that's it, I got to be part of this. So coming to the line, so giving a bit more detail about the development plans. So as I said, we plan to develop only in specific areas, and the line is our flagship urban area. That's where most of the population of Neom will live. And so we plan to have a population of close to 1 million people on the line by 2030. Most of that million will be on the line, and it's an area that we are going to develop as the most advanced urban model that exists. So we're building digitally first. So why the line? Why is it a line? So I think if you go back to what I said about the whole reason for existence of Neom, well, first of all, trying to balance those three pillars that I mentioned in a coherent way, and being fully sustainable, and also having an infrastructure which is fully autonomous, means that technology is everywhere in this. So it's a really advanced technology-driven development plan. It's a digital development plan. The structure of the line itself is really formed about the key objectives, which were to really maximize livability and sustainability. So I'm not an urban development expert, but I can guarantee you that some of the greatest minds in the world were on this and putting forward various options of how to combine those three factors that I mentioned, livability, thriving businesses, and also sustaining the environment. And really, one of the key things is to minimize that impact on the surface, the land surface. And so the line was the most optimal geometric form, where you would actually get everything you need in that type of city or cities. There's going to be multiple cities along the line with the minimum footprint. So it's a complex balance and algorithm to get to balance sustainability and livability and minimize the impact on the footprint. But the line was one of the models, and that's the one that optimized all three of those. And if you think about the livability aspect, they really studied where are people most happy in urban environments? What's the happiest size of an urban city? And that isn't necessarily in mega cities, which of millions and millions of people. There's an optimal size, and roughly, I don't know exactly what they came up to, but it's somewhere in the kind of, 70 to 100,000 people. And so what they were looking for was a modular structure, a digitally activatable infrastructure that could be built according to the demand and can be flexible in design, but where we can put in the physical and digital infrastructure right from the beginning to then activate things as you would a matrix. So the line was optimal for that, and the idea is to have these modular urban centers along the line, which are interconnected by the common infrastructure end to end, which is 170 kilometers along the line.
Right. Yeah.
So, modular centers of this, 80, 90, 100,000 people spread out, which can be activated, and each one can have its own specific character, which we're working on. So that was a key factor in this. And from the digital and infrastructure perspective, having a line is perfect for us from the backbone perspective, which is going to go through what we call the spine, which is going to be underground. It follows with the rapid urban transport system, which is going to be underground. We're going to have a service layer just above the transport layer, just above the spine, but below the ground, where we can have all our autonomous systems, all our autonomous equipment, all our baseband equipment. And then we just simply have optimized routes up above the ground where we can combine the utilities and then minimize the visible infrastructure will be minimized so that the antennas, et cetera, that need to be above ground are completely embedded into the buildings. So all of that putting all together was the optimal design to combine all of those.
Right. Yeah, it's very interesting. And if there's this diagram that we have up here, it's almost, you can definitely tell that people with a IT background or a CT background, designed the architecture, at least came up with this architecture. It's very, very interesting and thoughtful. And I do have a question. One of the things that I thought was really interesting about the line concept is this idea that there would be no cars. And so I guess the question I have is does the actual line, the decision to make Neom a line contribute to that objective? And does it relieve the pressures to have cars in a city that might be based on a grid structure? That's something I don't know if you have an answer for that, but I just think, if I were to sit there and kick the tires on the concept of the line, given that you guys have all these on the spine layer, a lot of the critical or the important transportation infrastructure at that lower level, that you would alleviate some of those pressures and needs for cars. And
I always knew you were very clever, Leonard, but you're spot on. You're here on this one. You figured that one out as well. Absolutely, it's one of the things I didn't mention earlier, but effectively, two other key criteria were, while we want to have a completely autonomous city, we want to maximize the physical well-being of people, and that we want people to walk around.
Yeah.
And that's some of the things that are not designed into all cities. So one of the objectives was that everything you need should be within a 5-minute walk, which means that you should spend most of your day walking around, right? At the same time, for efficiency and for the thriving business aspect, we were given the objective of having a 20-minute end-to-end transit time across that 170 kilometers. So you can go from one end of the line to another in 20 minutes. But at the same time, from any single point of the line, you can get everything you need within 5-minute walk. So obviously that restricts things even more. But then having that spine where you can actually jump on a rapid transit, which is extremely fast between those two ends, which guarantees you the 20 minutes. From anywhere along those modular cities along the line, you'll be within 5 minutes of jumping on the transit. Which gives you that 20 minutes end to end. So that was all very much part of it, and it's very much gone into the thinking of how people will live, how people will feel there, and that while it's going to be full of all this fantastic technology, that technology is going to be hidden, invisible, doesn't intrude. It's there to support you when you need it. It's a mixed reality environment. And at the same time, we're optimizing the possibilities for humans to walk around, to be human, to interact with their environment, to interact with nature, and optimize their time and their space, and feel secure. So it's the utopic combination of all of those. So very much to your point, the transport side. And the one thing I would add to that is also it's an integrated strategy. It's an integrated strategy across the infrastructure, but also across the transport, where people will be landing at the airport, very quickly onto the transit, from there going onto the autonomous shuttles. So it's an integrated transport system, which is completely autonomous as well, which is, an amazing ambition to have. And no cars. I mean, so certainly there'll be no cars on the line. We've made that very clear. And however, we do expect to have a lot of autonomous type of shuttles and vehicles. And, I don't think we've announced all the different innovations we're putting in there, but it's going to be exciting to keep listening and seeing what we're going to be announcing.
Okay, so speaking of technology, and you being the executive director of emerging technologies, what are the technologies that you're really excited about? In particular, what are some of the projects that you're working on that excite you and that you think could be revolutionary and applicable outside of the Neom context?
And there's so many of these, so I'll just pick just a few. And I'll try to be a bit.
Yeah.
I'll pick my top three, maybe. But I think, and I'll try and avoid kind of giving bland answers, that of generic categories, you could call them AI,
don't say
etc.
AI.
Of course, I won't say that. I won't say that because we all know it doesn't exist AI, but then there's a lot of machine learning and smart data stuff. Yeah. So really, for me, technologically speaking, what really gets me going. And we are doing some more kind of esoteric stuff as well, based around space as well, which is great. But first of all, sustainable technologies, or technologies that can digitally sustain a city and protect a city. So the opportunity to integrate the infrastructure, starting from the digital plan, gives you that opportunity to really look at sustainability on an end-to-end basis. So whether that's the 5G networks, the fiber networks, and the energy networks, the smart grid, the water networks, the sewage networks, and potentially the future clinical networks, then putting them all together in a way that you can define, okay, what am I trying to optimize here? Is it the carbon footprint per person, per action? Is it the food chain? Is it the local produce? We have a fantastic opportunity to integrate these systems. Simple case is the smart grid and the 5G edge distributed network, where we can have an integrated system where we decide, depending on where people's flow is, where we book the processing power for those networks, for the IT compute networks and the 5G networks. So we could have processors in the office areas that are working at full load, and then in the evening when those people have gone home, we could use some of that power to enable incredible high power immersive experiences for people who are in their homes and in the neighborhood by using that power locally and still optimizing our carbon footprint. So and by switching off other areas where we don't need it. So that's massive. Outside of the urban areas, we're experimenting with airborne networks. We'd like to make sure we don't need to build any towers, integrating with LEO satellites and with HAPS to have dynamic on-demand networks. You're talking about, over 90% of the territory here, of the size of Belgium, so quite a big one. Sparse population, because as I said, there won't be any urban centers there. So it's perfect to innovate by combining technologies and create systems that are completely sustainable. And that's really exciting as well. So that's a whole family of technologies and projects that we're working on, making the most of the green hydrogen that we're producing here to implement it in fuel cells and various backup solutions, etc. So that's one whole area. I'm also interested in, one of the things we're really interested in is reverse engineering Bitcoin, you could say. So if you look at yeah, it's a big task. Yeah, but I'm not going to do it. I'm just going to put it out there for people to do it. So if you look at Bitcoin with its proof of work, it's the most energy intensive model you could think of, because the miners are being asked to use a lot of effort to show that they've actually worked for it, which is terrible. I think, I think people have gotten onto that now. Okay, people are saying, well, most of the Bitcoins have been mined and whatever. But as a concept, imagine if we could use another type of blockchain model where the value or the consensus model is based on proof of sustainability, where you're actually minimizing the action, minimizing the energy spent. That's what I mean by reverse engineering or re-engineering. And that way you could have sustainable outcomes by actually rewarding those actors that are using the minimum energy to get to a certain task, which is useful for people. And those are the kind of innovations that we're looking at to also get community engagement that I find really exciting, and I'm really enjoying that. The second area is robotics. So we have an ambition of having 100,000 robots on the line by 2030. So we have to drive a complete revolution in robotics, because today it's not scalable. There's some fantastic robots out there. I'll say the dirty word, AI isn't really, there yet to make them really smart. But it's developing. But the economics aren't scalable to really have them cohabiting with humans in a way that we'd all love from our sci-fi films and our sci-fi movies and our Star Wars, etc. We'd all love that vision to be true. I think Neom is the place to make it happen, because we've got the scale, we've got the ambition, we've got the scope, we've got the environment. So we're designing our urban environment to be built for those 100,000 robots to be able to move freely and securely, making no danger to humans, and humans making no danger to the robots. The communication systems will be adapted to those robots, and they will be there to service and help humans and be companions. And to do that, to make that happen, you need to have a massively big computer brain, which we're building using the best of compute technologies. So that's a whole area of general purpose robotics, a revolution in our interaction with robots, which is again just one of a kind, and I'm just delighted to be working on that. The other third area I'd raise really is the mixed reality, the fusion of the physical and the digital, the infosphere, as some people have called it, such as my good friend Professor Floridi from the Oxford Internet Institute. We have an infospheres, so that's where our digital and physical worlds collide. And I've just spent the whole afternoon drafting out this model of digital development, where we've outlined how the digital content can give value both in the digital world and in the physical world, and how we're going to cross over between the two. So that merging of the AR, the XR, the holograms, the mixed realities, and the avatar-based robotics for remote interaction, we're blending all of those in ways that nobody has ever seen. and in a way that's gonna be mind blowing, to be honest, in the next few years.
Wow! So mind blown. My head hurts. Actually, I can't process all. It's truly incredible, and Mansoor, the opportunity that you have here to do something truly forward thinking and revolutionary. I don't think that there are probably no environments like this that you're describing for Neom in the world. It's truly amazing. So really quickly here, maybe if you could share some of your thoughts on how some of this amazing stuff that you're working on and the different teams at Neom are working on could be of benefit or change the way that we think about cities, in particular smart cities. Because here's the thing, my first impression, especially when I saw the line of Neom, was that you're looking at an entirely different structure, right? It's a completely different paradigm. I think you've made it abundantly clear in the last 40 minutes or so. But what are those things that can be portable, let's say, to a New York or a LA that can be gleaned off of all this stuff that you guys are doing at, these amazing things that you're doing at Neom?
Well, I think everything can be portable. We are designing everything here to be portable because everything is starting from the digital. So we're designing it to be a modular software-based system that can be ported anywhere, either as a kind of a vertical modules or horizontal modules, depending on what type of organization needs it. I think the real question is not so much what's portable, but what can be supported by the destination situation. So depending on the situation of the legacy infrastructure, some things you can implement easily on top, and some you can't. So every single city in the world is on this accelerated path to digital transformation. They're all at varying levels or of progress on that path. So what we can bring to the picture is the template for that future vision, where we are very fortunate to have, as we said, this environment, this unique environment where we can actually plan digitally first, and we can really think first about how should these cities look like, what should they enable, what should the experience be like 10 years, 20 years from now, and then work backwards rather than incrementally try and build on a legacy. It's a very different approach in that way. So we can certainly be a convener of conversations about the future of cities. We can enable the vision through what we're doing here as a template. And then what we'd like to do is to offer that as a platform to smart cities or any kind of legacy cities around the world who want to transform, where we're going to try and make it easy for every city in the world to be able to take a building block, a Lego block of whatever they think is where they want to start or where they are on their progress. So it might be something around the utilities. It might be something about the telecoms infrastructure, as a vertical, or it could be the data consent platform that we're building for transparency. So there's horizontal applications where we're separating out the organs of a future digital city, where you would have functions on analytics and digital twins, etc., that can be pulled out and that can be enabled. So everything should be selectable by the destination, so that they can actually just use the pieces that they want to do. And we want to start that conversation. So I think where we can help is already kicking off that conversation. The line has kicked off so many conversations.
Right.
What does it mean? What is important to be? What are the new values of life after COVID for us? I mean, have we shifted in what we value? We think we have, even though we started off with these new values. We now see that they're becoming more central to people's lives in terms of a greater focus on livability, for example, quality of life. Time, the quality of time that you spend with your colleagues, which has been so difficult to get nowadays because of the confinement. So we will be kicking off those discussions, and even as the line is going to take many years to build, those conversations will be developing, and those conversations on their own are going to change the world. And so that's why it's such an exciting place to be, because we're impacting through our words and actions. We're impacting through our digital models that are coming out as well, and our templates, and then the physical world will come as well, and each one is going to have its own potential impact.
Yeah, well, probably will serve also as the economic engine for Neom itself, right? I mean, you guys are going to be working on and developing some very unique innovations. So, it's a fascinating project. It's pretty obvious that you guys have really thought things through. So very impressive. And so Mansoor, I think we're up on our time here. Thank you for joining me. And why don't you take a real quick moment here to let our audience know how they can find out more about Neom?
Sure. I mean, it's very easy. I mean, we have our website, neom.com. We have all the information is there. There are some videos. You can also get to see some of the people who are building Neom from those different sectors that I mentioned. We talk a little bit. You'll hear from my boss, Joseph Bradley, our head of tech and digital, about his vision for the cognitive cities and how it's going to be a predictive environment which understands people and can react to people's needs. You'll hear a lot about how we plan to manage data, maximize the use of data, but with full transparency and consent. We're going to have a consent capability, which is second to none, where people will be able to know at any time how the data is being used and with complete trust, which is going to be really key to make this autonomous and make people comfortable with that. So that's the best place to start. We will be putting more and more material out there. There is more and more announcements that are going to be planned over this year. The line, by the way, is just one of our developments. It's our flagship, but there's many more currently being developed right now. So keep an eye on that website, and we also have our Twitter page and LinkedIn page. So it's quite easy actually to engage with us through those.
Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you again so much. And to our listeners and viewers, thanks for joining us. Please subscribe to our YouTube and Apple podcast channels and visit us at www.next-curve.com. Mansoor, I hope we have a chance to meet in Neom one of these days. Hopefully it's in the near future. I'd love to check it out and see the great progress that you and the rest of the Neom team make. And the line, I'm just really excited to see how that develops and all the amazing innovations that you guys are going to be working on.
You're very welcome, Leonard, and you're welcome here anytime, and look forward to speaking to you again in the near future.
Definitely. So until next time, be safe and stay healthy, my friend.
Likewise. Thank you. Bye now.
Visit us at www.next-curve.com.